Hi Year 9, as I said I would, I'm going to record a few videos just going through some of the key characters in Of Mice and Men, just to sharpen you up and just boost that knowledge going into the upcoming exam, okay? So I'm taking these quotes from the knowledge organizer I gave you. I'm going to start off with Candy. Okay, so number one, Candy, he had a round stick-like wrist but no hand. So this is how you'd build a Pete's paragraph using that quote. So Candy represents the theme of disability, or you could say he represents being one of the disempowered in the novel, or one of the weak in the novel, as shown in the description of him having a round stick-like wrist but no hand. Even if you remembered simply no hand, that would be fine, okay? Always remember, try and keep your quotes short and sweet, okay? So this suggests that he is literally physically limited, isn't he? In having no hand, he can't do the same things as the other men. This makes him weak. It makes him sort of viewed as low status, and that's reflected in his job title as well. He's a swamper because he can't do the same things as the other men. He has this low level job, and the men sort of view him in that way, that he's a bit irritating, a bit useless, a little bit someone who isn't seen as their equal. Okay, if we link to time then, what can we say? Well, we can say that Steinbeck is conveying how difficult life was in the 1930s, working on a ranch. It was a dangerous place to work, and this is shown obviously by the fact that Candy has probably lost his hand in an accident doing his job in the past, and that's going to make life very difficult for him, because as he gets older, and he's constantly aware, isn't he, of his age and the fact that as he gets older, there's less he can do, and he's closer and closer to being canned or sacked, in other words. Yeah. So as he gets older, there's not really any sort of safety net or support network for him like we have these days, in terms of we got the welfare state. You can go on the dole. There's jobs you can have. You have pensions. There's opportunities, aren't there? But at this time in history, he's very, very aware that there is no safety net, as I said, or support for him once he can no longer work. Okay, so we looked at that quote, yeah? Let's have a look at the second one. Let's go for the second one. Number 2, I had him so long, had him since he was a pup. It's always a good idea with your quotes to add a little bit of context or the situation in terms of who is he saying it to, what part of the novel is he saying it? Like, what's the situation surrounding the quote? Okay, so the point being, I had him so long, right? The point is, this represents this idea of the friendship Candy has with his dog, yeah? As shown when he says, I had him so long, had him since he was a pup. This suggests the close bond he's had with his dog, because he's had this dog for such a long time. And this sort of reflects almost the relationship between Lenny and George. And particularly if you're looking at Lenny and George in the terms of master and pet, I suppose. That Candy needs this dog to stave off, or to give him a way of escaping the loneliness that so many ranchmen sort of felt at this time in history, because obviously as migrant workers they would have been travelling around looking for work. So Candy's in a situation where the men on the ranch, because of the fact they had very short contracts, and they were migrant workers, they would be moving around. So he's not able to make relationships with those men. He would be probably a more permanent member of the ranch just because of his age. So his dog is being the one constant in his life, and sort of stable thing. So when he loses his dog, it's a real blow to him, because there's nothing obvious, a person or something else to replace that dog. So the dream, when he finds out about George and Lenny's dream, he really latches onto that, because it's that sort of opportunity to find companionship, which is so rare at this time in history, because people were so focused on themselves, because it was a matter of survival, because of the effects of the Great Depression. So there we've really gone into talking about time as well, haven't we? And so just that emphasis that yes, the Candy as he's getting older, it's just very difficult for him to make relationships. So his dog is so important. Okay, how about if we took and we look at number 5. So we can find some different things, because quotes 3, 4, some of the things I've already said, you could carry them over to those quotes as well, okay? But just to provide a bit of variety. That's 300, and I got 50 more coming at the end of the month. So that's quote 5. Right, so what are we going to say here? Candy represents sort of the theme of dreams, doesn't he? The sort of desire to chase or fulfill the American dream in particular. As shown when he says, that's 300, and I got 50 more coming at the end of the month. So this suggests, or we could mix it up, this implies, this conveys that Candy's contribution to the dream actually makes the dream not just this almost fairy tale story that George tells Lenny, almost to calm him, to soothe him, but really something that seems possible, that seems that it can happen, because he makes it a practical reality. He actually puts specific figure on the table, doesn't he? Say, right, we can do this. So he makes it seem real, and it increases the hope and the sense of a belief in the dream, and again that galvanizes and sort of builds the sort of hopes as well then of Lenny and particularly George as well, because he starts to actually believe in the dream in a way that obviously Lenny did all the time, because Lenny doesn't really see the idea of money being a factor really, because he's quite limited, isn't he? He can't quite grasp that. Okay, so how does that link to time? So Steinbeck is conveying here, isn't it, that this idea about the American dream, that it gave people this sense of something to strive towards. It gave them a bit of a reprieve, or that's another word for a break, from the harsh nature of this society. It gives them that sense of a goal, something to head towards. And this is the thing, see, we need to be critical here, that even though we've got this, again, this very practical and real sense of the dream by putting this specific figure down, because Candy can actually make this dream happen, Steinbeck is quite critical of the American dream, that despite how hard you work, which is the idea of the American dream, that if you work extremely hard, then you can achieve whatever you want in life. But he's critical that this just isn't the case for people like George and Lenny and Candy, these ranchmen, because society, due to the effects of the Wall Street crash causing the Great Depression, society was just too difficult. The extremely high levels of unemployment, the short-term nature of contracts, the power that employers had to dismiss employees when they wanted, it was just too much to overcome for men like Candy and George. And that creates a lot of sympathy with us, the readers, because it's a humble dream. It's a small dream. It's a dream that should seem achievable. And Candy makes it seem even more achievable here. But unfortunately, in the end, it's, regardless of even having seeming to almost have the money, it's just not enough, because at this time in history, society is just too harsh and too difficult to do anything about. Okay, I'll pause there. Well, I could say that even if you looked at quote 6, then you could have that idea, couldn't you, where you argue that where he says to Curly's wife, maybe you just better go along, in trying to stand up to her and support Crooks, where she sort of turns on him, that he feels bolstered and feels that confidence, that surge of confidence, because he's got that, they've just been talking about the dream and he's got it in his head, so it really boosts him up. So that's something you could say there. Okay, so that's on Candy now. I'll do another video on let's do Curly next. All right, okay, thanks.